Okay, this is a continuation of the lecture that we did today. Now we're going to be talking about the next threshold is how writing is a process all writers have. And all writers actually have more to learn, and writing is not actually perfectible. There's no way for it to be perfect. Since we've learned that good writing is dependent on so many different variables, such as who's reading, the situation. Once you start to see this, your imagination opens to what you can actually do with your writing. You recognize that you can do some things better than other things. This is because what you do and what you are as a writer is informed by your prior experience. More practice with certain kinds of writing that you may not be as good as other kinds of writing will actually help you to become a better writer. Since writing is a process that is informed by your prior experience, this is true for everyone. All writers have more to learn. Learning is key. You can learn to be better at something you are not strong at, and this brings about a freedom. If you feel like you still have more to learn or will always be learning, you're not lacking, you're just normal, because everybody keeps learning and there's more for everybody to learn. Writing is a process. It takes time and it takes practice. Writing things that are new to you, writing longer pieces, writing with new technology, all take practice. A professor once told me that our final draft we turn in is not actually the final draft. When I had saved my final draft for that class to turn in for the final, I put my final draft. And he told me that even though it was the final draft for that class, that paper could still be approved. That paper could still be made better. I could decide to publish it for an article, decide to get ideas for it for another class. It's not actual the final complete draft. It could keep getting better. This actually goes with the previous threshold of good writing is lots of things. Good writing depends on the reader. Good writing depends on how the different subjects we're writing on, depends on the roles for the different subjects. What you write will never be perfect, no matter how much you practice, because what we learned in good writing that it's so many things and it's dependent on other things. Readers make meaning out of your writing. Situations in which your writing is read makes a difference in meaning or whether it's effective. So what we write grows and changes. It is different and works better or worse for the purpose you choose to use it for. Yet there are still many strategies and habits that help you write easier, more quickly, and more effectively. Writing is a process and getting feedback helps. Getting feedback helps us to improve. It is freeing to learn that good writers are not born, but they are made. You practice it. It's a skill. You can get better. It's made through practice and circumstance. You can be good at writing short stories, but learn to be better at writing essays for school, or even vice versa. You can be good at writing essays for school, but learn to be better at writing short stories and for fiction or nonfiction. What you do as a writer will change once you realize no one is perfect. Good writing is dependent on the situation or the circumstance. All writers have more to learn, and you can learn how to be a better writer. The following threshold concepts will help with academic reading and academic writing. Since now you're in college, the way you read for the academics is different from other subjects. Many readings that we're going to read in this class are about research. They've almost all have been published somewhere else, such as a scholarly journal or book. And these are expert writing researchers telling other experts about studies they have done. So it may not be easy for us because we're not an expert, but yet we can learn to be able to read them. There are two threshold concepts about genre that will help us. Genre is recurring kinds of text that occur. And by learning the basic principles of genre, you can start to recognize the patterns that help you see what that specific genre means. And this would be called learning to think rhetorically, to think about communication and how the rhetorical situation, moments where people are communicating. Then while reading this writing, we're thinking they're trying to communicate with us. Communication is the activity. Rhetoric are the principles they use to do it. So we should look at these writers as trying to have a conversation with other experts about the topic. With genres, we learn that it's writing that responds to repeated situations through recognizable forms. So when we see those forms, we'll recognize that that's a specific genre. You may encounter these types of readings that you have never seen. Because there's many different ways to write about things, you will encounter new situations leading to groups of people who use writing in different ways to accomplish their goals. This leads to encountering all kinds of new writing you may have never seen. But you start to recognize the patterns and you start to see these different kinds of texts have different names because they happen over and over and they do certain things. So, if a particular kind of writing kept happening because of a certain situation, resulting in what needed to happen again and again, this type of text becomes a genre. For example, genres are a typified rhetorical situation in response to a recurrent situation or situation types. And by knowing the genre, it does a lot of the work for you. For example, resumes. We started to see that resumes were needed to apply for jobs because people were applying for jobs all the time and they learned how to write a resume. They learned how to make that timetable of these are the jobs I had, these are the skills, and they also learned how to write a cover letter because they've seen that others have done it first and they saw the results of what others did, and this became a genre. But without this genre, would people know how to apply for a job? They may use options They may use options that don't work, like sing a song or write a poem, something that's not really efficient. So, by having this genre of a resume, like this is what a resume looks like, it helps us to know what we need to do. But that these are the options when it comes to writing different types of resume. A genre gives you a limited aim to help you a better chance of success. In the movie The Patriot, Mel Gibson teaches his kids to shoot, and he tells them to aim small, miss small. So, by using a genre, we've learned that writers have seen over time or created a typical or expected response to situations that kept happening. And this starts to help you because you look for the patterns when you encounter new situations and new kinds of texts. So, even if you've never read that genre, you can look for the recurring situation it writes for to see previous response to know what that genre is. They're kind of like maps. If you know to look for them, you can figure out how to read them. Genres are maps to new situations. For a map to work, you have to ask certain questions. For a map, you have to ask, where am I? Where do I want to go? For a genre, you start to ask, what is the recurring situation that is being written for? What does the past work look like? Maps change because of technology, but you can figure out how to read new maps. Genres like map change, but it can help you to know how to read them. Also, like maps, they're not so rigid or a formula. When you look up a map, for example, when you look on your phone and you use the map app, when you type in, I want to get to UTRGB Edinburgh, it'll give you more than one way to get there based on less traffic, detours. You don't want to drive through the city, different maps. And because of that, a genre is not so much this is how you do it, but these are the options of how you can do it, but you can still choose this is how I'm going to write it. There's still more than one way to get to where you need to go. Okay, genres provide the requirements, but not how it should be done. They provide a way to look at questions to ask when you're looking at a new genre, to look at the similarities in a rhetorical situations, which is the situation that's calling for that specific genre, or the rhetoric created in response to these situations, the genre. Sonia Foss lists 4 types of questions to ask. The first one is questions about situational elements, such as what conditions call for this genre, or the prompts. What prompts are being asked so I can know the type of document I need to write. Questions about substantive characteristics, the content. What sort of content is typically found in this genre? What do these texts tend to talk about? Question about stylistic characteristics, the form. What form does this sort of genre take? Or what does it look like? How is it organized? What language does it use? Or what tone does it take? Questions about the organizing principle. What makes this genre what it is? What are the common denominators of this genre? For example, what makes a resume a resume? What makes an English academic article specific to English? It talks about how there's genre features of scholarly articles. John Swells talked about he created a research base. And he did this genre analysis of scholarly articles, looking at the introduction of thousands of types of articles. He wanted to see what was common in each of the introductions, so you could figure out what type of genre it is, to learn how to read it. He found that there are certain similar moves that readers can see. He calls it the CARS model. He describes three moves that almost all introductions in articles make. Move 1. The author will establish a territory. He sets the context of the research by providing the necessary background. And he does this in 3 steps. The first one is claiming centrality. He asks the discourse community to accept that the research that he presents is already a part of established research, or it's already used widely in academic disciplines. And he'll say, for example, like, knowledge of X is important for blank. Another way, the step 2, is they make topic generalizations. They make statements about current knowledge, practice, phenomena in that certain field. They'll say, like, X is a common finding in patients with diabetes or heart disease. Step 3, reviewing previous items of research. They talk about what has already been found on the topic and who found it. So they'll say, like, several studies have suggested that, and then they'll cite the source of who did the study. Move 2, they establish a niche. The authors argue that there's this open niche in the existing research that needs to be filled with more research. And they do this in 4 ways. The first one is they counterclaim. They actually challenge the earlier research by making a counterclaim. So they'll say, for example, while Jones and Riley believe X method is accurate, a close examination demonstrates their method is flawed. So they'll say, okay, these researchers made this argument, but as I look closer to it, I actually found that it is flawed and this is what is missing. And then they'll write their article about that, indicating a gap. They actually show that the earlier research does not cover all existing questions or problems. And this can happen because of since technology changes or time changes, what was found earlier can change. And they can write this in a way such as, while existing studies have clearly established X, they have not addressed Y. And then they'll address what's missing. They'll ask questions. Question raising. They'll ask questions about the previous research, suggesting that more research needs to be done. For the example, they'll say, while Jones and Morgan have established X, those findings raise a number of questions, including, so then they'll list the questions that they have and what they found in their article. The next move is occupying a niche. The author will turn that niche and they establish in move 2 into the research base that he or she will fill. They will actually subsistate, which is actually provide the evidence for the counterclaim they made. They'll fill the gap identified. They'll answer the questions, or they'll continue the research tradition. Many authors would do the following steps, but a lot of them stop in step 1A or B. Step 1A is they'll outline the process. They'll write about the main purpose of the current article. Or the next step, they'll announce the present research and they'll describe it in the current articles. But yet there's more steps you can do. You could also announce your principal findings. You present the main conclusions of his or her research. Step 3, you indicate the structure of the research article. You actually show the organization of how you're going to write the article. Next, we're going to take a look at how rhetorical reading is how texts are almost like people are talking. The way people communicate, it's back and forth. When we read text, we are interacting with other people. We're interacting with the writer. And texts are people talking. It talks about how the cars model works because scholarly texts represent taking turns in an ongoing conversation. So, for example, if they read an article and they see that the research doesn't show everything, and they come up with a research question, and that they decide to write the next article, they're answering the first person. Like, if you're having a conversation, the first person talks, and then the second person talks, and then it'll keep going back and forth. So we can read these texts a lot of time as if someone's trying to talk to me, to persuade me of these ideas, or to show me something. But yet this is hard for us because a lot of time in school we're taught to look at facts. What's real? To not pay attention to who's talking, but that facts are information that's independent from people thinking about it. So we're not really looking at how people think about how they get the answer to something. But yet in college, you will encounter a new way of thinking about text or people who are talking. Instead of seeing text as a single fixed meaning, we'll see them as many different readers may see it. Because every reader has been through something different, so that changes how they will experience a text. So they will get a different meaning because they already have ideas in their head, the interaction between the words in the text, the context in which the text is written or read. Reading is also something that we study and not just do. They found that in studies where they were tracking the reader's eyes have shown that not all words are read, but that fluent readers read whole phrases or lines at a time. Just like writing, there are reading theories. One theory is the rhetorical reading. That's the way the human's interaction depends on context and situations. Meaning comes from the interaction between text, context, writers, readers with specific background in specific situations. Why does this matter? And what does it mean when we say text or people talking? We learned that people have motives. Nonfiction texts say what they say because of how their writer is motivated by a variety of purposes. For example, if someone writes a resume, you know it's because they want to get a job. So that it's a motivated text. They're motivated to get a job. If you start to see every nonfiction text as the person who is writing it is motivated by something, by a purpose, it would be hard not to find one that's not a motivated text. If you ignore the motivation, you'll find one meaning. But if you start to look at the motivation, if you start to ask yourself, why did they write this? Why did they write about this topic? Or even the purpose, you will find a deeper or different meaning. Texts are called into being by a need shared between writers and readers. They call this the exigence. It's whatever is needed for the text to exist is built into a rhetorical situation. They talk about Wikipedia articles. When I was in college, we were taught that Wikipedia articles are not good source material to use for a research paper because anybody can edit it. But we were also taught that if you go to the bottom of a Wikipedia article, you'll find the sources that people have the site. And by clicking on those sources, you may actually find good material for your research paper. But a Wikipedia article is a good place to start to get an idea for a topic because Wikipedia article is written because a concept needs to be explained. But yet they try to make it a thorough and complete source of explanations of concepts. We use it to gain a quick understanding on a huge range of subjects about the topic. We try to make Wikipedia more complete, but they don't just post anything. There has to be sources, there has to be factual information, and it's to show that this information in the Wikipedia article is true or real. So exegesis is not the same as motive. Because exegesis asks, why does this piece of writing exist or should exist? Kind of like when I think of WebMD. They started putting that out there because maybe they saw that people needed a way to get medical information quickly if they don't have health insurance, they don't have access to a doctor, or they're traveling. But yet, even on WebMD, they'll still put you need to go see a doctor to find out what's wrong with you. Readers have needs, values, and expectation of text. When readers read, they already have a set knowledge or idea already formed. There's 4 kinds of that knowledge. The first one is experiential background. We have the knowledge of the world as a whole, how text or reading works, and this is shaped by our past reading experience. So the way we read something and the way we understand the meaning will be already shaped by what we know. There are also 3 more that are specific to the conversation they are taking a part in. Readers have a particular need related to the text. Let's say we research something specific. We're looking up a word in the dictionary or an encyclopedia. Readers have a specific set of values. Some value conciseness, while others value depth and information. Readers have specific expectations to what a text would do or be. Genre-based, a resume should look like a resume. A Wikipedia article should look like a Wikipedia article. Knowing this helps us to be aware of how to shape our text for what a reader may be expecting. Okay, the next thing we'll look at is how context will actually shape the construction of text, meaning of how we write the text. The context tells us how the writers try to anticipate the reader. Example, police shootings. When a shooting happens, the video is captured and is released to the public before an investigation takes place. So when that video is released, the news starts talking about it. People start talking about it. They make comments on Facebook, and this kind of creates a context of how that shooting is seen, even before the official report is released. So then, when the official report is released to the public, there's people who are going to use it. We're going to see that report, and they try to make educated guesses about why the report was written the way it is. And some people, because they may assume that the writers of the report may write it in a way that they think the public is expecting it to be written by that surrounding context. Okay, the final principle of rhetorical reading. Meaning that we get out of text depends on their context. Context shapes what the conversation means. For example, we can say one thing and can mean different things depending on the context. You can say it's really cold in here, and you might think, well, that's all it means. It's really cold in here. But for example, it's really cold in here could be one way of saying, please turn up the heat. And you can control the heat. You can actually change it. But someone could also say, it's really cold in here. It could mean, I wish we could turn up the heat. We could be in the classroom. There's no thermometer. I can't change the heat. We could be in an office building. Or, for example, someone could say, it's really cold in here. And they're actually reacting to the people in the room who are acting chilly towards each other. So that one sentence, which looks the same, actually has 3 different meanings. Okay, so in this class, we're going to be looking at different kinds of research, argument, and reading. What we read may not be considered fact, like in a traditional textbook. We're reading arguments, but they're not just any arguments. These arguments they made a question, they answer the question, they make an argument, and you got to provide proof to why that argument it is. They call it scholarly inquiry. They know that it's going to be imperfect, it's going to be incomplete, it's going to be inconclusive, it's going to be provisional, because someone else may come along and run the same test and find something different, or they may not be able to test everything. They know that it doesn't often offer easy or full answers. It's question and problem driven. Here's the problem, this is how I'm researching. Or they have a question, this is how I'm researching. It's a lot of personal opinion than facts, but even though it's your personal opinion, you still have to provide the sources to back up what you're saying. Since as a writer, you need readers in class, we will be each other's readers and we will give feedback. Okay, thank you.